Hey friends, this is Darnell coming to you once again from the beautiful Bedrock Ministry studio as we march forward with America in Bible prophecy. So we're talking about the Great Tribulation, that 3.5 year period of time right before the rapture and the second coming of Christ. It's the last 3.5 years before the second coming. We know that it's the second half of a 7 year period that the Bible essentially refers to as the 70th week of Daniel. And that final 7 years starts with a peace treaty between Israel and the Palestinians that allow for a rebuilding, really, of the third temple on the Temple Mount in Jerusalem. This is all in the news. If you're not paying attention to world news, you might not be aware of that, but it is in world news as we're watching prophetic events being fulfilled right before our very eyes. But we're talking about that final 3.5 years where Satan, as I said in the previous teaching video, by the way, this is teaching video number 3 of this subject matter on the Great Tribulation. So if you have missed the first 2, go back and listen to them and get caught up. But we're on number 3. We know at this point that Satan and his demonic followers have been cast down out of heaven, restricted essentially, I believe, to the earth. And Satan at this point is going to divest all of his power into the beast, into the Antichrist, and into the one world government system that the Antichrist will politically rule over at that point. So that is where we're at in time. So we know that Satan is going to come down to the earth when he's cast down at this point with great wrath. We read that before. It's in Revelation 12:12. Let me read it again. It says, "Therefore rejoice, O heavens, and you who dwell in them. But woe," that means you're in trouble. It says, "Woe to you, O earth and sea, for the devil has come down to you in great wrath, because he knows that his time is short." Well, yes, it's short because he only has 3.5 years left until the rapture and the second coming, when the angel binds him up, binds the devil up in chains and casts him into the abyss for 1,000 years. But that's at the end of the 3.5 years. He's cast down out of heaven with his followers at the beginning of the 3.5 years, and this verse says that he comes down with great wrath. So what's he going to do? Well, the first thing he's going to do is he's going to go after the Jews in the West Bank territory. So I've been kind of talking about this a little bit, and I'm going to go back to this passage in Matthew where Jesus is laying out what's going to happen at this time. And it says here in verse 15, we're in chapter 24, of course, of Matthew. Verse 15 says, "So when you see the abomination of desolation spoken of by Daniel the prophet," what is that talking about? That is talking about that event where the Antichrist marches into this third temple that is yet to be built and stops the sacrifices, breaks the covenant, breaks the peace agreement between Israel and the Palestinians, and he stops these sacrifices and declares himself to be God, to basically be worshipped, to basically have all allegiance paying to him, sets up an idol. And that's what the Bible calls the abomination of desolation. Jesus is saying, when you see that event, when you see the abomination of desolation standing in the holy place, that's the temple. It says in parentheses, "Let the reader understand. Then let those who are in Judea." This is where we know, looking at history and looking at current world events and looking at the geography, we know this is talking about the West Bank, where at this point in time, 400,000 to 500,000 Jews live in the West Bank. Now we know that this West Bank territory is disputed land right now, but the reality is that God gave this land to the Jews, to Israel. It really rightfully belongs to them, but it's disputed through these historical events that have happened and I won't get into all the history of it, where it became under control of Jordan and so forth. There's a lot of history there that I just don't have time to go into because I want to stay on point. I'm talking today about the Great Tribulation and what the Antichrist is going to do. But it says here that he says, let those who are in Judea flee to the mountains. Let the one who is on the housetop not go down to take what is in his house. And let the one who is in the field not turn back to take his cloak. He's saying, listen, when this event happens, when the Antichrist comes down, when the devil comes down with great wrath and puts all his power and authority into the Antichrist and this one world government system, the Antichrist is going after the Jews in the West Bank hard and fast. He's saying, don't even take time to go get your jacket. Don't worry about taking time to go in your house and gather things. You're not going to have time. This is where in the previous teaching videos I was talking about, where Jesus says this is going to be more tribulation than the world has ever seen. We're just about to come up to that in this passage. He says, let the one who is on the housetop not go down to take what is in his house, and let the one who is in the field not turn back to take his cloak. And alas, for women who are pregnant and for those who are nursing infants in those days. He's saying, and you almost better hope you're not pregnant or nursing an infant when this event happens. He says, pray that your flight may not be in winter or on a Sabbath. He's saying, listen, this is going to be rough. He says, for then there will be great tribulation, such as has not been from the beginning of the world until now, and never will be. And if those days had not been cut short, no human being would be saved. So this is the great wrath. It's immediately, the Antichrist is immediately going to go after the Jews in the West Bank territory. The Palestinians are going to turn on, it's all going to break loose, and they are going to be the immediate target. Now we know that this is where, looking in Revelation 12:12, we know that this is where America, and this is the encouraging news for us here in America, because for all the problems that we have, my friends, and yes, we have some real problems in the United States, and yes, the United States is divided between really what I would call democratic socialists, progressives, and Christians, a very divided nation. But that doesn't mean, just because there's a lot of problems in the United States, just because there's a lot of sin, just because there's a lot of godless people, does not mean that the Christians don't carry some weight. It does not mean that we just have to throw out all the good parts of the United States and discredit all believers. There's a strong contingency of faith-filled people that love the Lord, regardless of where they fall on their understanding level of the Bible or Bible prophecy or whatever. They're still people of faith. And the passage in Revelation chapter 12 is what it's talking about. It says, when the dragon saw that he had been thrown down to the earth, he pursued the woman. That's Israel. That's what I'm talking about. He's going to go after Israel. He's going to go after the Jews in the West Bank, and who had given birth to the male child. He's going after Israel, just as they all have all throughout history, because it's through the Jews that our Savior was born. And these are demonically influenced people. And he says here, but the woman was given the 2 wings of the great eagle. Now, we've already talked about that. America is symbolized by the eagle. We know this from the book of Daniel, where Daniel interpreted the dream of Nebuchadnezzar, where Daniel saw a vision himself of the beast coming out of the sea, and the 4 beasts, and one of the beasts had the appearance of a lion, and it had eagle's wings that were detached. If you missed that prophetic teaching video, need to go back and watch it, but we know that that is the symbolizing America. And so this says here that the woman was given 2 wings of a great eagle so that she might fly from the serpent into the wilderness to the place where she is to be nourished for time and times and time and a half. So she's going to be brought back into Israel proper, and she's going to be nourished there and protected for 3.5 years, which is what the times and time and a half is. So this is what we're seeing here, my friends. And so then what is the Antichrist going to do? He initially goes after the Jews in the West Bank, great tribulation, great wrath. America steps in and helps those Jews come back into the homeland to protect them. And then what is the Antichrist going to do in this one world government system called the beast? Then they're going to go after Christians everywhere, my friends. That's what's going to happen. That's what the Bible tells us, is that he is going to turn his wrath on the saints, and so we know that if we read on in Matthew, back to Matthew chapter 24, in verse 9, actually, you can jump up. It seems out of order because I just read 15 to 22, but if you read it in context, you'll find out that chapter 15, he says, so when you see the abomination, he had already talked about some events that were going to be happening, but he says, when you see it, he's saying that's when it's going to start. So really, you could almost flip, if you're really following this, you could almost put it, as far as chronological order, you could almost put verses 9 through 13 be after 15 through 22. But he says, then they will deliver you up to tribulation and put you to death, and you will be hated by all nations for my name's sake, and then many will fall away and betray one another and hate one another, and many false prophets will arise and lead many astray, because lawlessness will be increased, the love of many will grow cold, but the one who endures to the end will be saved. Once again, we know another reference here that the fact that the saints will still be around at this time. I'm going to give you several scriptures that identify that the saints are still going to be around. He says, the one who endures till the end. He's talking about the great tribulation. He's talking about the final 3.5 years. He's talking about after the abomination of desolation. And he clearly says in verse 13, but the one who endures till the end will be saved. Well, if the church had already been raptured and that's a done deal, then there would be no one that has to endure till the end to be saved. So he says, and this gospel of the kingdom will be proclaimed throughout the whole world as a testimony to all nations, and then the end will come. So that was Jesus's reference to this. We'll flip back over now to Revelation 14. Which just gives us another account of the same thing. In Revelation 14, we know that, just for the sake of reference, we know that verse 14 and beyond talk about the 2 harvests, so there's the rapture again, but we're going to go back before that to verse 6, where John is seeing this vision, this revelation from Jesus. He says, it talks about the messages of the 3 angels. Verse 6 says, then I saw another angel flying directly overhead with an eternal gospel to proclaim to those who dwell on the earth and to every nation and tribe and language and people. And he said with a loud voice, fear God and give him glory, because the hour of his judgment has come, and worship him who made heaven and earth and sea and the springs of water. Well, that passage right there, verses 6 through 7, is talking about the gospel going out to the whole earth, which is what Jesus was referring to that I just read in Matthew in 24. 14, and this gospel of the kingdom will be proclaimed throughout the whole world as a testimony to all nations, and in the end will come. So we're seeing this tied together here, so we know where we're at on the prophetic timeline. Goes on in verse 8 to say, another angel, a second, followed, saying, fallen, fallen is Babylon the Great, she who made all nations drink of the wine of the passion of her immorality. So we know then that we're not only going to see the Antichrist go after the Jews in the West Bank territory and America bring them to protection in Israel. We know now also that we're going to see the gospel going out. Remember, saints are still going to be on the earth at this time, my friends, and therefore the gospel is going to be going out, because believers who understand the Bible are going to be telling the world, hey, take a look at what's going on around. This is why there will be great revival at this time, because this idea that the church is going to be gone and then it's just going to be all demonic forces ruling on the earth and everything. No, it's not going to be like that. There is going to be great revival going on at this time, my friends, because while this is going on, believers are going to be saying, hey, people, wake up and listen. This is what the Bible is saying. So there's going to be a great falling away and there's going to be a great revival all at the same time. This gray area that we're used to seeing and living is going to go away. People are going to have to make a decision. They're going to either have to stand up for their faith in Christ, in which case they're going to make themselves vulnerable to whatever happens, whatever God's will is for them at that point, or they're going to have to deny their faith and fall away. So we not only know that that's going to be going on, but what I just read in verse 8, we're in Revelation 14:8, it says that Babylon the Great is going to fall. Well, if you've been following my prophetic teaching videos, you know what this is talking about. This is talking about false Christianity, because remember, the false prophet had been bringing the apostate church, the false Christianity, into the one world government system. And then, as you will have remembered me talking and teaching about, there's going to come the point when the Antichrist and the one world government is going to turn on false religion, and it's going to turn, and I believe that the Bible clearly indicates that it's talking about the Vatican and Rome and Catholicism, who's going to lead this world religion, this one world religion, in line with the one world government. They're going to have a joint sort of relationship, but the time is going to come when the wrath of Satan comes down, and the one world government and the Antichrist is going to turn on false religion. It's going to turn on this mystery Babylon. It's going to turn on the false Christianity, and it's going to bring her down. And so that's what that verse is talking about. Then we move on to verse 9. It says, and another angel, a third, followed them, saying with a loud voice, if anyone worships the beast or its image and receives a mark on his forehead or his hand, he also will drink the wine of God's wrath, poured full strength into the cup of his anger, and he will be tormented with fire and sulfur in the presence of the holy angels and in the presence of the Lamb. And the smoke of their torment goes up forever and ever, and they have no rest day or night, these worshippers of the beast and its image, and whoever receives the mark of his name. Verse 12, here is a call for the endurance of the saints and those who keep the commandments of the Lord and their faith in Jesus. Once again, we see a reference there to the saints of God still in the earth today, or at this point. My friends, it's very clear. The mark of the beast does not come until after the abomination of desolation. It does not come until that final 3.5 years. So Once again, this is something that unfortunately religion has painted this picture that the mark of the beast could start any time. That is not correct. We're a little ways off, not too far off, but we're a little ways off. There's things that have to fall in line with the prophetic timeline before the mark of the beast can come. I guess I better leave it there. Perhaps on the next prophetic teaching video, we'll dig just a little bit deeper into these events of the mark of the beast and the events that are going to be happening during that time. So much to uncover. Exciting stuff ahead. Terrifying things if you are not walking with the Lord. But boy, I mean to tell you, my friends, things are moving rapidly. The days and the weeks are going by fast. Events are happening in the world. We see these events, all these events that I've been teaching you about on this prophetic teaching videos, as well as elsewhere in the website. I'm telling you, my friends, I hope that you're preparing yourself for the things that God promises in His Word are soon to come on the world stage, because ready or not, here they come. Hey, this is Darnell coming to you from the beautiful Bedrock Ministry studio. Now let's go change the day.